Good morning, this is Mrs. Ewell. We're working on our second 3 weeks of the Future Cities packet, and we're looking at fractions. It's funny, when I started doing this, I didn't realize how long this section would be, and I realized everything you know about fractions is a lot. So I want to review that for you. And I know you learned about fractions in elementary school, which probably seems like years ago, and we're going to review it now. We need to use it so when we do our scale drawings, we have an idea of how to do ratios and how to multiply by a fraction. We know what those answers are. So I know you avoid fractions whenever you can, and now we're going to have to use them. So let's look and see what it is that we're going to be reviewing. Here's a list of things that I want to know what you remember about fractions. So if you could write these down, and I want you to try and define these terms. I did these when I was doing this, and I actually struggled to get real formal definitions of some of them. I just want to know, do you know what a fraction is? Do you know what equivalent fractions are? How about factors, multiples, mixed numbers, improper fractions, simplified fractions, and common denominators? So pause the tape, pause the video, write down the definitions of these, and then when you're ready, you can check and see how well you did. I'm going to scatter them throughout here, so they're not just going to be all in a row. So a fraction is any part of a group, a number, or a whole. So I can have half of a group, I can have half of a number, I can have half of a whole thing. When I think about fractions, there are two parts. There's the denominator and there's the numerator. So the top number is the numerator, the bottom is the denominator. Here I took a whole, I divided it in half, and I have one of those halves. Here I can look at the 3 main types of fractions, and we're going to talk about all of these. These are proper fractions. This is where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. Improper fractions, and then mixed numbers. I'm going to tell you, probably in elementary school and middle school, they told you not to use improper fractions, but to change them to mixed numbers. I'm going to tell you just the opposite. We really like improper fractions in math, especially high school math. I can use them in slope, and I prefer improper fractions. So equivalent fractions, fractions that have the same value. When I look at these, what this is saying is if I have 1, equivalent to 1 is 1/2. Equivalent to 1/2 would be 2/4. Equivalent to 1/4 would be 2/8. And I probably said that wrong. Equivalent to 1 is 2/2. So I can look at these and look at the idea of equivalent fractions. Or I can say here, 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4, 4/8. 8/16 or 16s 32nds. As long as I multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing, I can make equivalent fractions, and we'll practice these in just a second. So really remember, to form equivalent fractions, I'm going to multiply or divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. So what are 2 fractions you know that are equivalent to 8/12? And I'm going to do this on the whiteboard. So take a second, write 2 equations that are equivalent to 8/12. And I will do it on the whiteboard. There we go. So if I look at 8/12, the first thing I could do is I could multiply the top and the bottom by 3. Remember, 3 over 3 is just a fancy name for 1, and I can always multiply by 1. 8 times 3 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. So that's one way I could get an equivalent fraction, but I could also divide. I could divide this by 4 over 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I'm saying 2/3 is the equivalent fraction. So I'm going to say 2/3 is equal to 8/12, which is equal to 24 over 36. And notice that I could get from 2/3 to 24 over 36 by just multiplying the top and the bottom by 12. 2 times 12 is 24. 3 times 12 is 36. So when I'm making equivalent fractions, I can either multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing, or I could divide the top and the bottom by the same thing. Going on with our review. I want to go back to looking at my screen. Okay, we did this one. Now we're going to look at a factor. Factors are really interesting. People get factors confused all the time. But a factor is a whole number that divides exactly into another number. I like to say a factor is a number that goes into another number without a remainder. A whole number that multiplies with another number to make a third number is another way to look at it. So if I think about 6, 2 times 3 is 6. So 2 and 3 are the factors of 6. So 2 ways to think about it. A factor is a number that divides into another number without a remainder. Or if I'm talking about a whole number like 10, factors of 10 are 1 and 10 because 1 times 10 is 10. Or 2 times 5 are also factors of 10 because 2 times 5 is 10. So 2 ways I can look at factors. Factor pair we just talked about. There are pair numbers that multiply together to give me another number. Multiples. Multiples are a sequence of products using the same base number when it's multiplied by different numbers. So when I'm talking about multiples, multiples of 6 would be 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. Multiples of 8, I'd read across here, 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. So if I were to consider 10, so 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. So we're going to read across to find the multiples of that given number. Least common denominator. This is an interesting one. When we add and subtract fractions, we need the LCD, the least common multiple. People always forget what that is. So when I have two fractions that I'm adding, they have different denominators. I need to find the least common denominator. So I've got to convert them to the same one. So in this case, it would be 12. 3 goes into 12 and 4 goes into 12 evenly. Let's see if I put that on the next page. Yep. So for 1/3, here are the multiples, 3, 6, 9, 12. Multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12. I take the smallest one that they have in common. So the least common denominator is 12. To turn 1/3 into 12, I multiply the top and the bottom by 4. To change 1/4 into 12, I multiply the top and the bottom by 3. So now I can go ahead and add them. 4 twelfths plus 3 twelfths is 7 twelfths. And we'll do some of these later on. I'm just trying to see how much you remember here and see how you're doing. It's also important to know, since you're in high school, you always need to write a fraction in the simplest form. So when I look at 18 over 24, was that one I just had? Nope, I'll change back to the whiteboard and do this one. So this one says, write this in simplest form. I want you to find a number that divides into both 18 and 24 because I need to take any of the common factors out. So let me go to the whiteboard. It's always interesting to switch back and forth. Okay, let me do this one for you. I need to write 18 and 24 simplified, so I need to take out common factors. Say I don't know what it is, but I know that 18 and 24 are both even numbers, so I know that even numbers are divisible by 2. 18 divided by 2 is going to give me 9. 24 divided by 2 is going to give me 12. Then I look at 9 and 12 and I think, that's really strange because they're both divisible by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So I'm saying that 18/24 in simplest form is 3 over 4. If you know multiples, you would know that 6 goes into 18 evenly and 6 goes into 24 evenly. So 6 is a factor of 18, 6 is a factor of 24. 6 goes into 18 3 times, 6 goes into 24 4 times. So in both cases, I get the same answer. If you do it by smaller numbers, it's okay. If you do it by the biggest factor, common factor, it makes your job easier. But either way works. I'm still going to get 3/4. So back to the smartboard. Okay, so we got this one done. Yay. Now, when I multiply fractions, I am going to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. Multiplying is super easy. I don't have to worry about common factors. I just multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. I am going to tell you, you do need to see if you need to simplify your fraction. So after you multiply, you are going to check to see if you simplified. Notice if I have fancy algebra terms, I say that A over B times C over D is AC over BD. Here is B and D cannot be 0. That's because in math, the one thing I can never, ever, ever do is divide by 0. So going to the whiteboard, we're going to multiply 2/5 times 3/8. I want you to take a second and do it, and then make sure you reduce it if you need to, and then check in with the whiteboard, and I will do it up here. So our example here was 2/5 times 3/8. I'm just going to multiply across the top. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 8 is 40. And now those are both even numbers, so I know 6 and 40 are divisible by 2. I divide both by 2, and I am going to get 3 over 20. This is one way you can do it, and this won't hurt at all. But if you know how to cross cancel, I think that's easier. If this makes no sense to you, just pretend that I never said this. So I am still multiplying. I'm going to look at the cross numbers. So I'm going to look at 2 and 8. 2 goes into itself once. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 3 and 5 don't have any common factors, so there's nothing to reduce. Now, once I've cross-reduced it, 1 times 3 is 3. 5 times 4 is 20. Notice I got the same answer either way. So if you know how to cross-cancel, I would use that, especially when we have variables. It helps a lot. Again, you get the same answer whichever way that you do this. So back to the smartboard. We're going to look at dividing. To divide a number by a fraction, or multiply the number by the reciprocal of the fraction. So 2 ways to think about this. This is really interesting that they wrote it this way. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to write this because this is not how I think about it. So I say 1 over 5 times 3/4 is going to be the same thing as 1/5 times 4 over 3. The reciprocal means that I turn it upside down. And then it becomes 1 times 4 and 5 times 3. 1 times 4 is 4, 5 times 3 is 15. They didn't finish that part. If you say it with algebra, A over B divided by C over D is going to be the same thing as A over B times D over C, which will give me AD over BC. And here B and C cannot be 0. Remember, in math, the one thing I can never ever do is divide by 0. So let's try this one on the board. We're going to do 3 over 7 divided by 5 over 6. And let me switch to the whiteboard. Okay, so I'm going to erase the ones that we have up here so far. So they gave us 3/7 divided by 5/6. What they told us to do is to flip this second one. So I'm going to get 3/7. And this becomes a time. So 3/7 times 6/5. 3 times 6 is 18. 7 times 5 is 35. So I'm saying 3/7 divided by 5/6 is 18/35. Usually when I think about fractions and I think about dividing, I'm more used to seeing them written this way. So here we have 3/4 divided by 1/5. If they're written as a fraction divided by a fraction, it is the bottom fraction that you flip. So I'm flipping the denominator, so this becomes 3/4 times 5/1, which is 15/4. So notice if I went back to the first problem, 3/7 divided by 5/6 would end up being 3/7 times 6/5, which is going to give me 18/35. Same answer. This is just a different way of writing this original problem that we had, and you will see things written both ways. Okay. Now, adding or subtracting fractions with like denominators is pretty easy. If they both have the same denominator, I am just going to add the numerators or the top, and I'm going to copy down the C, or the denominator. If I'm subtracting, I just subtract the top, and I copy down the bottom one. So take a second and think about example 1 and 2. The denominator is the same on this. So for the, I'm going to do these on the smartboard. So go ahead and do these, make sure that you simplify them, and then tell me what the answer is. And I will do them on the whiteboard for you. This first one's tricky because I hope you remember to simplify it. Let me make sure that the screen's on. Okay, good, right camera's on. So if I have 7/12 plus 1/12, they have the same denominator. All I have to do is copy down that denominator and then add the top. 7 plus 1 is 8. You might think you're done, but you're not. Remember, we need to simplify. When I think about 8 and 12, I know that they are both divisible by 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So my answer, 7/12 plus 1/12 is 2/3. For the next one, I have 7/9 minus 2/9. Again, this one's easy for me because the same denominator. I just copy down the denominator. 7 minus 2 is 5. And I'm good to go. Notice for that one, I did not have to simplify. There were no numbers that were factors of both 5 and 9, which makes my job easier. Okay, next one. If I'm adding and subtracting, let me move my picture so you can see this. If I have unlike denominators, so they're saying an interesting way to do this. They want you to multiply the numerator and the denominator of each fraction by the denominator of the other. So that is one way I could do it. And that's a super easy way to find what a common denominator is. A lot of times that's a problem because you have to end up reducing them. And then the second way is you're going to use the least common denominator so that then you can add or subtract them. So let's look at these. And I will do these both ways. I think that's important to do. Oh, I'm going to actually wait on number 4 because I haven't talked about, I will do this one later. I haven't talked about what I do with mixed numbers yet. So let me just do the first one. Stop and see if you can do it first, and then go on with checking to see if you got it done. And I'm going to do it both ways. So when I have 1/8 plus 5/16, oh man, this could be tough. What they're saying is I am going to multiply the 8 by the 16. So really what they want me to do is they want me to do 1/8 times 16 over 16 plus 5/16. And now I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 8/8. So let's figure out what 16 times 8 is. 6 times 8 is 48. Carry the 4, so it's going to be 128. So this is going to give me 16 over 128 plus 40 over 128, which is going to give me 56. 16 plus 40 is 56 over 128. Now, this is going to be a weird one because I know they're both even, so they can both be divided by 2, which is going to give me 28 over 64. These are both even. I can divide by 2 over 2 again, which is going to give me 14 over 32. I can divide by 2 again, and I'm going to get 7 over 16. If you knew bigger factors, you could have done those right away. So let's look at another way to do it. So I think it's easier to find the least common denominator. When I look at multiples of 8, I'm going to get 8, 16, 24. Multiples of 16 are going to be 16. Notice I have a common multiple right there. So I can use this for my least common denominator is going to be 16. To change 1/8 into 16, I'm going to multiply it by 2 over 2, which is going to give me 2 over 16. So really what I have is 2 over 16 plus 5 over 16, and I still get 7 over 16. I think it's easier to use the least common multiple than multiply them by each other, but whatever way works for you, I am good to go on that one. So practice these. Here you're going to have to remember to simplify your fractions. And I will try and remember to come back to the other one because we have not done anything with mixed numbers yet. So adding and subtracting fractions, just a quick check for you. Let's see if you can do 1/3 plus 1/5, and then 1/4 minus 2/9. Notice that you're going to have to find common denominators in order to do these. I'm going to go ahead and do them on the whiteboard. Pause for a second. When you're ready to go, then go ahead and turn it back on. So, first one we had was 1/3 plus 1/5. I know that for 3, I would have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. For 5, I have 5, 10, and 15. So the least common denominator, lowest common denominator is going to be 15. I need to multiply 1/3 by 5. 3 times 5 is 15. And then I need to multiply 5 by 3 in order to get 15. So this is going to be 5/15 plus 3/15, which is going to be 8/15. So my answer to that one was 8/15. The next one was 1/4 minus 2/9. So this is a really interesting one. So multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. For 9, it's going to be 9, 18, 27, 36. So here, 36 is going to be the least common denominator. I need to multiply 1/4 by 9 over 9. And I need to multiply 2/9 by 1, 2, 3, 4 by 4 over 4. Notice in this case, I could have multiplied by the other denominator. I would have gotten the same thing. So this is going to be 9 over 36 minus 8 over 36. 9 minus 8 is 1. So my answer is 1 over 36. How'd you do on that one? Okay. I think we're getting close to being done, maybe. Okay, we got this done. Improper fractions, and I hate the name improper fractions because they're actually perfectly fine. We call them improper fractions when the denominator is smaller than the numerator, or you could say when the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Why we like these in high school math is because I can read the slope of this easier. I know that the y changes by 5 as the x changes by 2, and that actually means a lot more to me than if you wrote this as 2 1/2. I don't really know what this means. So we really like improper fractions. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not really improper. So when I have 4 over 5/8, to write it as an improper fraction, I'm going to multiply the 4 by the denominator and then add the top to it. So let me do this one on the smartboard. Go ahead and see if you can figure out what this is. Okay, I'll erase all these for you so I don't get you confused. So 4 and 5/8. I think about this as 4 times 8 is 32. Let me write this down. 4 times 8 is 32. 32 plus 5 is going to be 37. So the numerator is 37 and the bottom stays 8. And I can check this out for a second and see, did I get the same thing? If I divide 37 by 8, 8 goes into 37 4 times. 4 times 8 is 32. 37 minus 32 is 5. This is my remainder. So this is 4, and my remainder I could write as 5 divided by 8. So we got the right thing. So remember, you're just going to multiply the whole number by the denominator and then add it to whatever was in the numerator. Ooh, write this one as a mixed number. So I need to think about how many times does 7 go into 19? And then what is the remainder and how can I write that as a fraction? So let's see how this one goes. Oh, I think I lost my mouse. My battery must be dying on this one. Okay, so when I look at this one, I want to write 19 over 7 as a mixed number. Again, I'm dividing the numerator by the denominator. So for long division, this is 7 goes into 19. 7 goes into 19 2 times. 7 times 2 is 14. I subtract 19 minus 14 is 5. So 5 is my remainder. I'm going to write this as 7. My remainder goes on top of the fraction. So it's 7 5/7. So, and if you think about this, and I don't know why I wrote a 7 there. That's what I was thinking about. It's not 7. This is the whole number. Very entertaining that I did this. This is 2 5/7. So it's good to check your math. So 2 times 7 is equal to 14. 14 plus 5 is 19, which is what I had the numerator there. Sorry, I don't know why I just all of a sudden put a 7 there. So the 2 is the whole number piece right here. The 5 is the numerator of the fraction. Okay, let's try this. Okay, now here this whole thing is, if I am going to multiply and I have mixed numbers, I actually need to change the mixed number into an improper fraction and then go ahead and do the multiplication. So pause for a second and try these. Remember on these, one of these is a multiplication, one is a division. So same thing with the division that we did before. We're actually going to flip the second one and then turn it into multiplication. So go ahead and pause and do these. And I will do them on the whiteboard. Okay, so first one, 5 1/2 times 3/4. I need to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. So I'm going to write this as 11/2 times 3/4. Now I can just multiply. I multiply across the top. 11 times 3 is 33. And across the bottom, 2 times 4 is 8. So this is my answer. 5 1/2 times 3/4 is 33/8. For the next one, if I have 8 divided by 2 1/3, this is really interesting. People always have trouble changing a whole number into a fraction. It is super easy. I just make it a fraction where the denominator is 1. So 8 I can write as 8/1 divided by 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So this is 7/3. And now I can write it as a multiplication, and I'm going to flip the second fraction. So 8/1 times 3/7. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 over 1 times 7 is 7. So we got those two done. So remember, when you're multiplying and dividing, you are going to change them into improper fractions first if they give them to you as mixed numbers. Oh, interesting now. And most of you already know how to do this. So let's see here. Write the percent or decimal as a fraction. So here they gave it to you worked out 86%. Percent means part of 100, so I can make the denominator be 100. So I have 86 over 100, and then I need to simplify that. So it's going to be 2 divides into both of those, so it's 43 over 50. For the second one, 125%, I put 125 over 100. They're both divisible by 25. 125 divided by 25 is 5. 100 divided by 25 is 4. And I really want you to leave it as 5/4. I do not like mixed numbers. Here, 0.2. You would really write this as 0.2. Well, you would write it as 2/10 because this is one place after the decimal. So this is a tenths place. 2/10. Both of them are divisible by 2, so simplified, I'm going to get 1/5. So to write the percent our fraction as a decimal. Remember that this means parts of 100. So I would write this as 19. I need to move the decimal 2 places to the left, so it's 0.19. So to write a fraction as a decimal, you simply divide the top by the bottom. Said that wrong. So I'm going to divide the top by the bottom. 3 divided by 8 on your calculator would be 0.375. Interesting. I'm not sure why they did it this way, but they said in order to have 20 be 100, I need to multiply the top and the bottom both by 5. So I'm going to get 15 over 100. This means this is going to be 0.15. And if I'm going to write the decimal or fraction as a percent, to write as a percent, I'm going to move it 2 places to the right and add the percent sign. So 0.34 is 34%. 0.915, I move it 2 places, 91.5. For the 3 over 2, again, they're saying in order to turn 2 into 100, I need to multiply the top and the bottom by 50. So 3 times 50 is 150, 2 times 50 is 100, and this is 150%. So that is the end of this section. And let me see, let me stop the share. It was lovely to talk to all of you guys, and I will see you again soon. Hopefully this helped for you. Oops, I had to figure out how to stop it.